The United Nations Secretary General has called on governments to impose windfall taxes on energy companies making what he called scandalously high profits. Antonio Guterres said the money should be used to help the most vulnerable instead. He said that the largest energy companies were guilty of grotesque greed as well as harming the environment.
It is immoral for oil and gas companies to be making record profits from this energy crisis on the back of the poorest people and communities and at a massive cost to the climate. The combined profits of the largest energy companies in the first quarter of this year are close to $100 billion. I urge all governments to tax these excessive profits and use the funds to support the most vulnerable people through these difficult times. And I urge people everywhere to send a clear message to the fossil fuel industry and their financiers that this grotesque greed is punishing the poorest and most vulnerable people while destroying our only common home, the planet.
Antonio Guterres there. Well, let's cross over to New York. Michelle Fleury joins us live now. Michelle, before we actually talk about the call for a windfall tax by the UN, I just wonder, is it normal for the UN to get involved in something like this?
I mean, it's very unusual when you have a head of a body like that attacking US or I should say global oil and gas multinationals. It's fairly unusual, but then so are these times. We're talking about a period when we're seeing really high gas prices. Many people want to know who's to blame for that and what role these companies have played in this. And increasingly, the finger is being pointed at these firms who have been accused of taking advantage of the situation, which has seen this sort of energy crisis fueled in part by the war in Ukraine.
And we saw just yesterday BP, the next company to announce record profits. When it comes to what Antonio Guterres is asking for, he's effectively calling for a windfall tax.
Yeah, so he wants this windfall tax on excessive profits, the idea being that you would take the money and sort of redistribute it, essentially, give it to those who need it most. It's unclear sort of what the reaction will be from governments, but certainly if you look here in the United States, President Biden has been involved in a bit of a back and forth with the big oil majors here in the United States. I mean, I think he sort of said that ExxonMobil has made more money than God, and he wants to make clear that every American knows exactly sort of what these profits are. The kind of, if you like, the argument or the criticism these companies have faced is that while they were quick to sort of, you know, when prices, when oil supplies were limited and prices rose, they were quick to pass them on, but as prices come back down, they're not quite so fast to pass that gain, if you like, that benefit to consumers. And that's where these accusations come in, that they are taking advantage of the situation and making excess profits and not ramping up production when they could, given that there is now sort of a better profit margin available to these firms, which would indeed sort of help ease some of the kind of pain that people are feeling at the pump right now.
And Michelle, when we hear of these absolutely huge figures, the companies, the energy companies are saying that, you know, they go through a difficult time a while back, and this is now obviously a better time for them, but they're just doing their job and it's up to governments to govern this. I guess, is the conversation changing now around who has the responsibility to kind of alleviate the people that are effectively going to be choosing between heating or eating?
I mean, I think there's little sign of that at the moment, and certainly, you know, going back to what's happening here in the United States, if you look at the back and forth between President Biden and the oil companies, they've pushed back and said, well, hang on a second, you know, issue more leases for us to give us more drilling permits and we drill more. The truth of the matter is that prior to this energy crisis, a lot of companies, energy companies, particularly in the shale space, went bankrupt. Now it is economical at these prices for them to be producing more. So it goes to this idea of who is to blame for the high prices. And right now, increasingly, people are saying, as we're seeing today from the UN, look, it's immoral to be sitting on these record profits and not trying to do something with it. And I guess the idea being that if the executives won't do something, then you're seeing this call from the UN to get governments to do something instead, and that is in the form of windfall taxes.
Fascinating to see the UN get involved. Michelle Fleury, as always, many thanks for talking us through this.